Hey everybody, welcome back to I'm Blanking. This is your host, Cesar Rocha, and today we are on episode 7, I believe. I think I got mixed up last week with my episodes I did when I was uploading it. So last week's was episode 6 that got put out in the beginning of the week, and then today is episode 7. I'm a little bit off track with uploading things, but I am trying to generate more clips. So if you guys haven't seen any of my clips, follow me on TikTok and YouTube at I'm Blanking. Should be fairly easy to find. I've searched it multiple times and it does pop up, but you can find the rest of my clips there. Go ahead and give me a follow. So today's topic is going to be kind of surrounded by buyers for real estate and also buyers for the auto industry. Again, I'm going to repeat myself and share a little bit of my background. 10 years in the auto industry, starting from receptionist to BDC to frontline sales. And, now being in real estate, I'm going on a year and a half or so. Yeah, about a year and 7 months, right around there. And so I'm just kind of exploring, my new venture with life and, the real estate. And it's been good. Car business was also really good. It was really successful. And before that, it was just a lot of retail work. So before we get into that, we're just going to kind of recap of the week. I did talk about the weekend and how that was, really busy. That was last week. From that point up until now, I did have a little bit busy weekend as well. So Friday, what was Friday? Oh yes, Friday was a Halloween party at my buddy's house in Whittier, and there was about 10 of us there. I'm surprised we all fit. LOL. But it was a really good time. Got to see, my boys, got to see, their partners. Every time we get together, it's always a good time. We really love hanging out with them, and there's laughter, there's crying, there's serious conversation topics, there's goofing around, there's drinking, of course. It's all great, really good time. But all that partying really got to me on Saturday. I don't know what happened. I've usually been able to drink and not really have quite a hangover as I felt this past Saturday, but for some reason the hangover just really got me. I don't know what I did differently. Maybe I didn't eat as much or something, or I didn't hydrate, but something really got to me, and I was hungover on Saturday. But Saturday, pretty much rested. I was literally here on the couch just like, I think I'm going to throw up. I'm not going to throw up. I don't know what was happening. But anyways, so then later we surprised my aunt for her birthday. So we went over to go see her. And, we went to church. We had dinner. We helped out with some snack packaging because she's getting ready for, her niece's baby shower. So we helped out with that. I saw my sister, which was really great. I saw my sister-in-law. That was good. And then Sunday, I had done an open house in Pico. And it was extremely busy. Extremely busy. And that's kind of where we're going to fall into our topic right now of buyers and things like that. So the open house was really good. I had about 14 to 15 groups come in, families, whatever you want to call them. They all pretty much signed in, which is really good. And I was able to help them out. I did want my lender there. Well, not my lender, but the lender I use. I wanted him there, but he was actually busy this weekend. So doing it by myself, I just had to just do it. I wasn't expecting it to be that busy. The first 35 minutes was extremely slow, and I was like, okay, it's gonna kind of be slow this whole time. But no, it picked up from 12:30 to 1:30. I was busy, had a little bit of a break, and then 2 to 3 I was busy again. Oh my gosh, I had 3 or 4, no, I think I had 2 to 3 families two or three groups at one time. So just trying to navigate through them, making sure they were all being helped out. It felt good. It felt like being back, kind of at the dealership, just like juggling. When you guys are busy and everybody else is busy, it's kind of, you got to drop your customer really quick. You got to go say hi to the other one. Potentially two car deal. Capture kind of day, right? So getting into buyers for real estate, I have some notes here, so please don't mind me as far as looking at my phone. What are buyers looking for these days? Specifically, first-time buyers. I feel like first-time buyers are really big right now. I feel like people have been waiting since 2019 around COVID time. I feel like if you didn't buy, in 2020 or 2021, you kind of missed the mark. And, now you've been waiting and, things have happened. People are in office and, things are a little bit different. Not the way that we thought things were going to go, but we will see what happens, right? So right now, I think the first deal I had done was October last year, and the rates around that time were better. They were like, mid fives to high fives, like kind of reaching that 6. And I forget what my buyer got, but it was definitely under 6. I think he might have gotten like 5.7 something, 5.5 something. So he even tells me to this day, because he was in the position of, I'm not sure if I should buy it right now. The rates are high. What if they go down? And we told them, like, right now is a good time, because we can't predict what's going to happen in the future. And look at where we are a year later. We're at 1% higher, average wise. So it just depends on what bank you're using and the rates at that time. But yeah, so he tells me all the time, like, I really bought it at a good time. And within that year, he hasn't built up much equity, but he's already building. He's already kind of paying down his loan, things like that. He has a very affordable payment. He's made his house a home, and he's really happy. And I know he has bigger things that he wants to do in the future. Maybe he stays there another 2-3 years and ventures out and gets another property. That'd be amazing. But what are buyers really looking for? First-time buyers really looking for this time? I think right now, just with conversations, a lot of buyers are looking for, DPA, down payment assistance programs, or they're looking for grants, or they're looking for ways to help, because, it is expensive. There is a lot of upfront cost that go into buying a house. I mean, let's say you have a savings of like 20, 30, 40, 50K, you cannot use all of that for down payment, because there's also, closing costs that come with it. You're going to have to pay the lender for the loan, and then there's going to be costs all included into that. So, maybe you're only going to use, 90% or whatever of your down payment, and the other percent's going to go to, your closing costs. But besides that, I've been, trying to stay more updated with the market and seeing where things are going. I just read an article the other day, and I also listened to like the audio version of it, and they were saying like a lot of buyers are out of the market now. So I don't know if you guys remember, like I believe it was like in the like the beginning of the month, or maybe like a month ago, when the rates really dropped. They took like a big drop. There was a lot of new buyers that came out. But then now we're kind of back up in the interest rate, and buyers don't want to lock in the rate. That 0.25%, whatever, it does change things. It makes things a little bit different. And with that said too, it's also, going down to pricing. So yeah, I read that article that a lot of buyers, have stopped looking, or, they didn't close deals for like, the September and going into October. And now they're kind of stuck again too, to try to see if rates are going to go down. And it's kind of hard to receive a lot of data. I mean, there's data there, there's data pools that you can get it from, but with the government shutdown, it's kind of hard to stay up to date of what's happening like week to week, especially with like the government being shut down. So with that, there was a lot of new buyers, but what are they specifically looking for when they're buying a house? What are you looking for when you're trying to buy this house? Are you looking for, something that's done and remodeled? That's another conversation. That's another topic that I was reading about, is that a lot of first time buyers, they're not wanting a house that's not up to date. And yes, we know that everything can't be perfect, but if you're buying a house that somebody lived there for 30, 40, 50 years and they didn't redo anything, that's kind of tough for a new buyer that's already, putting out a lot of their pretty much life savings into this property, and eventually are going to have to redo it themselves. And I'm not saying you have to redo the whole house. No, definitely not. But I mean, take a look at the big picture. Like, where do most families spend their time? Obviously in the kitchen. They got to cook. Yeah, you can do some things to the kitchen, right? You can put some money into it and get it redone. You can have somebody paint the interior of the house, just a regular color that's a little bit easy for, somebody new to come in and then change it to what they want. And now I know there's a lot of debate about having your client do these things or not spending the money because, that's just the buyer's problem. I get that. I understand both sides. Like I said, I'm in the business. I understand that. But at the same time, that could be, the selling point that you're missing. That could be getting your house sold quicker, faster by just doing some of these little things. Another thing that I read was that, when people are doing their inspections just the inspections, is that, sellers aren't really wanting to replace anything because they're like, well, it was fine for me. I've lived here for 30 or 40 years. But at the same time, most homeowners aren't getting their house inspected, every 5 to 10 years, or, never getting it inspected. Why would they get inspected if everything works, right? But when things happen, we have earthquakes all the time over here. We have rain, we have, floods. It's not common, but it does happen, and we freak out over here. So it's just a lot of things that, go into the inspection report where buyers are seeing that now and they're not happy with that. And so, yes, it kind of falls on the buyer where it's like, well, you could have bought this, but you didn't want to have to deal with all this stuff. And now maybe that property did sell, right, to somebody that really didn't care about it. But still, on both sides, now the buyer has to kind of go back out and start looking and trying to find something that they want to invest their money in, which is a smart idea, right? You're putting a lot of money up front. On the other side, too, yes, you sold the house, but what about that current buyer? Like, are they now going to struggle to getting it fixed up, or are they going to be, have the means to take care of the issues from the inspection report, stuff like that? The real estate is a really interesting world where a lot of things go into it, where a lot of us don't recognize that, and there's a lot that goes into the real estate process. I mean, even insurance right now, too. I mean, if you're going to make an offer on a home, before you make that offer, you should already have an insurance company or multiple insurance companies that you want to get quotes from for, a property, right? So if you like a property and you're like, we should write an offer, your agent should be telling you to investigate or, have resources for insurance. Because if you submit your deal and you cannot afford the insurance now, with obviously your payment and your interest and all that stuff, I mean, you're not doing anybody justice. Like, even if you're the first one into the deal, if you can't get a good insurance, or if the prices are jacked up high, or if you're in like a high fire zone, which is a lot of places now in Southern California where there's a lot of fires, that's going to mess up your deal. You're going to be wasting time. So that's another thing too. There's costs and things of home buying, and yes, I see it on both sides. I follow I'm on Nextdoor and I see people's posts, I see people's comments. People are always advertising like their rental properties, things like that. And, I also see people comment, like, oh, why would I pay, for this $1 million house when I can just pay for this rent, or vice versa. It's like, why would I pay that rent if I could just go and buy a property? But the conversation is definitely way deeper than that, extremely deeper. Let me see what else I have in my notes here. So yes, so when you're shopping for a house, are you the buyer, whether you're single or married or coupled, whatever it may be, are you looking for a property that's been updated? Does it have certain things that you want? Is it or are you locked into a certain price because of your loan, and so now you're kind of just stuck choosing something that is not going to be the best fit, that's going to need A, B, and C done, right? Is it size? Do you care about size? I have a lot of people come in, they're like, oh, I want a backyard, or I want this, or I want that. I understand that, but some of the conversations I have is like, oh, my husband works weekends, and then I work during the day, and then I got to pick up the kids, and then this and that and this and that. I get it that you want to get it for the kids, but at the same time, it's like, when will you have time for that upkeep? Do you really want a bigger lot? Because that's a lot more upkeep, right? Are you going to do anything with that? We kind of have to start taking things down. Is a location, and sometimes location has to do with your approval, because if you're only approved for 500,000, 600,000, sometimes the cities that you want to move to, they're not going to have anything, or it's going to be a condo, and then now you have to worry about the HOA, and then you have to downsize dramatically, right? So what is it that buyers are looking for these days? I kind of, and those are all valid answers, but like, you guys are the active buyers out there, and you guys are negotiating and doing certain things. Really quickly, I had a couple that came into Pico, the open house, and I had a really great conversation with them. And the guy was telling me that they had gone into escrow in a property in Whittier, and when the inspection came back, there was like foundation issues, there was plumbing issues, major issues that are affecting the property, right? And he was telling me that the seller didn't want to do any repairs to the property. They didn't want to go and have to do this, that, and this, which is okay, right? Because the seller has that choice. But at the same time, if that's the case, then, you have an option to ask for, a concession or something back to the buyer, where the buyer, maybe doesn't have to put out so much money down, or they don't have to pay for the closing costs or something, right? And so that way they can use that money to take care of those issues after. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but still, so in that example, sellers don't want to pay to fix their own house to sell it. Now, I don't know if that house sold. Most likely it did, because there are some buyers out there that are like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just move forward, and we'll take care of it at the best appropriate time. So it's just crazy, because it's not just one side. The buyers are not going to just sacrifice, and then have to live in a house that's, structurally damaged or cracked or something, And then sellers, I feel like sellers sometimes get a little too picky. They think the house is, just because they lived there for 30, 40 years, they think it's like the perfect house because it's been good for them, Well, yeah, good for you is not good for everybody, And I was telling my wife this. I was like, it's crazy how we can estimate a value for a property based on what the buyers are buying properties for. So to kind of simplify that is, if you're listing a property for $1 million, right? how did we come up with that price, right? We came up with that price because of what maybe previous buyers in that area have bought in properties for that are similar to the property that we're trying to currently sell. So I was telling my wife, I was like, what if we just start like a revolution, and, all the buyers out there, we just start underbidding, the asking price, right? Like, what if it turns into like this like big snowball effect? Like, if you have $1 million property, you're just gonna be like, nope, I'll pay you 800,000, and that's still expensive, by the way. 800,000. I mean, even a million, right? But still, like, what if we were just like, no, we'll pay 800,000, and then we share this video, and then all the buyers are like, yeah, we could, like, because the buyers can, you guys can offer whatever price that you want, and if and yes, I know the logistics of like, well, that's not going to make sense. No one's going to buy the property. The property, the sellers aren't going to take it. That's okay. But what I'm trying to make is a point here of, if like every person were to underbid like 100 or 150, $200,000 on every house that they underbid, sellers need to sell for whatever reason. They're either moving out, whatever, and who does that a lot is flippers. Flippers do that all the time. The house is $1 million. They'll be like, okay, we'll do $800,000 cash. They do it all the time. It's the same thing. But like, what if like it just kept happening, right? What if we set the new standard, right? Because us buyers are giving the facts and the data for whoever in that surrounding area wants to sell in the future. Because if we buy it for $1 million and somebody's like, well, this sold for $1 million 2 months ago, and we can ask for $1,025,000, or a year ago, now we can ask for 1.1, and that's how it works, because and that's how equity works, is that it just keeps building based on past data. So that was just crazy. I was like, what if there was like a revolution? What if like we just like all the buyers were like just telling their agents like, I want to just throw an offer in like 100,000 less. You'd be in the win. I mean, seller still sells their property. They're still getting their equity. They're still getting their money. Maybe not as much, yeah, but at the same time, buyers kind of do control what the market is, because they're actually buying the product at that price. That's the crazy part. The start a revolution. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's flip over to the car side. So buyers, I know people buy cars every day, just like people buy houses, but I'm sure there's a lot more units of cars sold than there is houses. Give me 1 second. I'll get a little sip of this. So on the car side, what do buyers looking for these days, right? New cars can be difficult to sell because just like kind of like homes, how every home seller is like, my house is perfect. Every manufacturer, every salesman is going to say, this car is better than this car. Kind of, right? They're like, oh, this is the leading class, or this has the best technology, or this has the best fuel economy, right? So everyone's going to hype up their vehicle. But as far as buyers, what are you guys looking for these days? I mean, is it I in a perfect world, I wish that hybrids could be a lot better. Meaning that I wish we had a more powerful engine versus like the 1.6 turbos versus like, the hybrids with the turbos. I just wish they made like a really solid engine with a hybrid battery that got really great power and fuel economy. Why can't we get that? Like I said, I used to work at Hyundai, and I remember when they started rolling out like SUV hybrids, and they started throwing in their 1.6 turbos. Man, those 1.6 turbos, they're zippy. They got a lot of torque, but they ain't gonna do nothing. they're not going to do anything. Maybe if it was a 2.0 or something with the hybrid, that's a little bit different. Now, I know technology for hybrids are getting better, but I just wish there was like a really solid engine, like 2.0 or higher, that had a hybrid and that was affordable, right? Like, and not too expensive. I think about my future and I think about, having a family, and I think about how I'm going to need a bigger car or that I want a bigger car. But then at the same time, I'm like, I just read an article and I just seen a video saying that the average cost of a car is like $50,000, which is crazy, And some SUVs nowadays, some trucks are like 90 to 100 grand, if not more. That's insane, But there's people out there that, I just been watching and reading too many articles these days where the rich are gonna just keep getting richer, right? And the middle class folks are always gonna get the short end of the stick, and because it's hard to keep up, right? It's hard to move from the middle to like get higher, right? And who's buying these vehicles, and who's using it for their business. Like, yeah, it's super doable. It's legal to, like, buy this $100,000 car and then just like be able to ride it off where it really doesn't mean anything. And it depends on the weight and all that stuff too. Like, so I understand it, but I'm just like, geez, man, like they're really, like, the economy is like really getting to us. First, we can't afford houses, or the income that we're making cannot afford to get this house, right? And then now cars are just getting more expensive, where a lot of people are just leasing them, which makes total sense to me. I understand that there's people out there that just drive too much, so unfortunately, maybe, yeah, you just do have to buy it. But at the same time, it's like a lot of people are leasing. They're leasing EVs a lot, and which I think is really smart, because EVs for some reason are stupid expensive to get repaired. Um, Even though they sell like hundreds of thousands of units, how can it be so expensive when you're selling so much? It's crazy. But yeah, so what are buyers looking for? Are you guys going for like used cars these days? Are you just trying to stick to new? I mean, what's the struggle out there? Are you struggling to like find a good deal? Are you struggling to find the right car? Is it color? Is it, I don't even know what the difference is between this car and this car, things like that. And it's a hard decision, right? I mean, you go on one test drive, and you're supposed to know what the car is. You're supposed to know what the car is going to do for you in the next coming months, years. Is it going to break down? Is it not going to break down? I have There's been so many times where people have bought cars for me, new cars, used cars, doesn't matter, and months later it just breaks down. Like, literally, it just breaks down. I've had it countless times, and the client has to take it to service. Service says they fixed it, and then it breaks down again a few weeks later. Then they got to bring the car back. I know two people personally, or not personally, but that I keep in good contact with, and it's happened to them, and they're frustrated. And every time they bring it to service, it gets fixed, and then now they have to do the lemon law, and then now they get paid out. Now they don't even know if they want to go back with the same manufacturer, things like that. It's crazy, right? How do we know that we're going to be getting the best deal, right? How do we know we're not getting, our money taken from us? And how do we know that the car is going to last long, right? Used cars are difficult too. Just because it's a certified pre-owned doesn't mean that the car is going to be, good for X amount of time, especially if it's not certified pre-owned. I mean, I know, and I've seen dealerships do certain things to used cars just to make them run, just to make them be out in the, in the front lot. And it's happened to me too with used cars. People drive it and they call me, a week later, hey, the car has a check engine light, or hey, like the car died, like what do I do? Or, sometimes I've known that the check engine light was on. I've taken it to service and they're like, okay, we checked it out, it's fine. And somehow the check engine light's off, and I'm just like, okay, well, if you're telling me that it's good, then it's good then, you know. I've it's been crazy, it's like cars have been dead and we got to leave them on. So it's tough out there. I get that it's tough out there for, car shopping as well. But like I said, back to it, like, what is it that you're looking for? Is it difficult just to find the car itself? I mean, car prices are never going to really go down. I know that the car loans are taking kind of a hit right now. There's been a lot of repossessing and stuff like that too. And I do think that buying a car or getting a loan for a car should be a little bit more difficult, right? Not in the sense of like, oh, like we have to provide all this information, but like I've mentioned before, like if you had good credit, you had insurance, they check the credit, they see that it's a good score, you don't have to provide any type of income, right? I think that maybe we should be a little bit more difficult with that, with every client, right? We should get proof of funds, we should get proof of residence, we should get proof of insurance, we should get all of that and have it verified. But the car industry is so quick. There's auto approval sometimes, There's AI systems nowadays that are approving auto loans that, they look at the criteria that you're putting. I don't know how they do it. They look at the person's name, the social, they pull up everything, and then you just see a check mark on the screen. You don't gotta talk to nobody. Yeah, maybe you have to look at the terms or whatever, but at the same time, I mean, a lot of AI stuff is just auto approving people. So we need these. It's hard to say let's be strict because then that's gonna slow down the process. I know I'm kind of like going back and forth with it, but still, like it is tough sometimes, and it's not good when somebody can't afford it, right? Or, it's like, well, we kind of trap them into, well, you have to pay this, or like, you're not going to get a car today. But then on maybe the front side or the back side, we're making like thousands of dollars because of it, And, it doesn't feel good. Yeah, we get the money, we make money, but at the same time, that's somebody's life that, we're making extra difficult because we want to make money, but we also don't really care that their payment now is $100 more than what they should have been. It's crazy. It's really difficult. But now that's pretty much it. I just really wanted to talk and ask the buyers what they've been struggling with on the real estate side. We'll kind of wrap it up here. Buyers on the real estate side, what's been difficult for you? What are you looking for when you're looking at properties? Could be a condo, townhouse, single family residence. Are you looking for stuff to be more upgraded? Is it location? Is it, just because maybe your credit or your money situation is only putting you in a certain pocket? What is it? What's going on with it, right? Buyers for the car industry, same thing. Are you doing the research to get the best deal? Are you feeling like you can't get the car you want, and the affordability? Is the dealership making it difficult for you because, they don't want to discount their vehicle? At the end of the day, all these things have to sell. People need to sell their homes. They need to sell it. Dealerships need to sell their cars so they can get new cars. That's just how it works. So if you want to negotiate and you want to go down that rabbit hole and just negotiate, until your fingers hurt with like, writing down all the numbers that you want, you can definitely do that. But there are a little bit easier ways to do it. Easier way would obviously be talking to, a professional in real estate. That would be me. I can help guide you. I can help answer your questions if you're a buyer. And on the car side too, I can make it a bit easier for you where you get a, good solid deal and there's no back and forth. There's, a lot less time spent where I can get the quotes for you, being a broker, and make your life easier. You just got to figure out what car you want, and I can get you, 3 different numbers from 3 different places, and we can go with whatever one you want. So there's a lot of ways to do this. Unfortunately, we just gotta kind of bite the bullet right now. things are expensive. I understand that. Living costs are expensive. Trying to work, have a social life, and pay bills, and be with family is definitely hard. And we all have goals and dreams that we want to do, and maybe we're feeling stuck in certain situations right now. Maybe it's relationship situations, job situations. Maybe we're feeling stuck. Let's have a conversation about that and see what we can come up with. See if we can brainstorm and see how we can get better. Other than that, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.